Far away, on the very edge of explored space, there was a small alien research outpost, barely visible against the backdrop of black stars. The planet it was built on had always been strange but stable. It was covered with forests of enormous crystalline trees that glowed faintly at night, and rivers that shimmered with colors no human eye could truly describe. The aliens who lived there had always been careful, methodical, and intelligent. They were explorers, scientists, and engineers, tasked with observing the universe, documenting rare cosmic phenomena, and understanding how their world connected with the countless others scattered across space. Life on the outpost had never been easy. Supplies arrived only once every few years, and communication with nearby star systems was limited. Yet the team had grown used to this isolation. They were a tight-knit group, bonded not just by duty but by years of shared challenges and quiet victories. The outpost itself was a marvel of technology. Towers of strange metal jutted into the sky, capturing energy from the planet's magnetic field. Devices monitored everything: weather patterns, soil chemistry, atmospheric shifts, even the movements of strange native creatures that scuttled and floated across the planet's surface. Every day was a meticulous routine of observation, recording, and reporting. But one day, everything began to change. It started subtly at first. A few of the smaller crystalline trees lost their glow. Then the rivers began to shift colors erratically, almost violently, as if the entire planet was reacting to some invisible force. At first, the team thought it might be a natural cycle or an anomaly in their instruments. But soon, it became clear this was something much more serious. The ground itself began to tremble in small, uneven pulses. Not enough to collapse the structures, but enough to unsettle everyone. The air became heavier, and strange storms of electric light danced across the horizon. It was unlike anything recorded in the past 100 years. Panic was not immediate. The team remained professional. They ran tests, analyzed samples, and tried to understand the changes scientifically. But each day, the anomalies grew worse. Crops meant for sustenance failed. Energy collection was disrupted by storms of electrical interference. Even the smallest mechanical systems began to malfunction unpredictably. The outpost's computers emitted strange warning signals, beeping and flashing as though trying to communicate something urgent. The aliens realized that the planet itself might be dying, or worse, that it had triggered some kind of chain reaction that could destroy everything on the surface. They tried sending routine communication requests to neighboring colonies, asking for guidance and additional analysis, but the response was delayed, garbled, and inconsistent. The signals seemed to lose strength, corrupted by distance or interference from unknown cosmic forces. Time was running out, and each passing hour made the situation more desperate. The scientists gathered in the main control room, their faces reflecting both fear and determination. The leader of the outpost, a wise and experienced alien named Vayner, understood the gravity of what they were facing. He had seen disasters before, but never on this scale, and never one that threatened to completely annihilate an entire planet. After hours of debate and data analysis, Vayner made the decision that would change everything. They would send a desperate, all-encompassing SOS to the galaxy. This was not just a simple distress signal. It was a message encoded with multiple layers of information, energy signatures, and urgency protocols. It was designed to reach anyone, anywhere, who might understand it and respond. The message carried not only coordinates but also information about the planet's rapidly deteriorating condition, the biological threats, and the imminent danger to the team itself. Every line of code was a plea for help. Every pulse of energy, a silent cry echoing across the dark reaches of space. The team worked tirelessly to prepare the SOS. Machines hummed and glowed as they amplified the signal, sending it farther and farther, through light years of empty void. The message traveled through cosmic storms, asteroid fields, and magnetic disturbances, spreading into sectors of space rarely visited by intelligent life. As the SOS left the planet, there was a sense of both hope and dread. Hope, because help might come, maybe even from the distant human fleets known to patrol the galaxy. Dread, because the universe was vast and dangerous, and they had no way of knowing who or what might detect their signal. Unknown to the aliens, their SOS carried something else as well. Hidden in the energy pattern of the signal was a trigger, one that was not intentional but unavoidable. Deep in a distant part of the galaxy, a long-dormant fleet of Deathworlders, a legendary and feared species, known for their brutality and near-invincible warships, was lying in wait. They had been in hiding for centuries, conserving energy and remaining undetected, waiting for a signal just like this. And the moment the SOS reached a certain threshold, the Deathworlder systems activated. Massive warships, shaped like jagged black mountains with pulsating veins of energy, began to stir. Hundreds of smaller fighter craft powered up, engines igniting with silent fury. Ancient commands embedded in their programming recognized the SOS as both a call and a warning, a civilization in distress that must be investigated and, if necessary, destroyed. Back on the alien outpost, the team had no idea what they had set in motion. They watched the final transmission pulse into space, hoping beyond hope that someone, anyone, would hear and respond. They could feel the tension in the air, the electricity of fear, and the weight of impending doom pressing on them. Their survival depended on help arriving quickly, yet in the back of their minds, the faint possibility lingered that no one might come. Every alien there knew the universe was dangerous, but none could have predicted the scale of what was about to unfold. As night fell on the crystalline forests and the glowing rivers, the outpost lay in uneasy silence. The SOS signal had gone, traveling faster than light, invisible but potent. Somewhere in the galaxy it would reach the eyes and ears of countless beings, some friendly, some indifferent, some dangerous beyond imagination, and among them, the Deathworlder fleet, awakened after centuries, began its slow, unstoppable approach toward the tiny, fragile planet. What had begun as a desperate cry for help was about to become a beacon for one of the deadliest forces the universe had ever known. The aliens slept little that night, monitoring the planet's unstable systems and hoping against hope that rescue might come. But even as they rested, unaware of what lay ahead, the first engines of the Deathworlder warships fired in distant space, signaling the beginning of a terrifying chase. Their SOS, meant as salvation, had unknowingly triggered a chain reaction that could either bring them help or doom them all. And in that quiet, tense night, the universe seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see which path the alien distress would follow, survival or annihilation. Far away from the trembling alien outpost, in the calm corridors of the central human fleet, the SOS signal began to flicker onto consoles like a strange, living pulse. Analysts at first stared at it with curiosity. They had seen countless signals from distant parts of the galaxy, from routine scientific surveys to desperate calls from explorers lost in uncharted sectors. But this one was different. It carried something almost alive in its energy pattern, a rhythm that seemed to scream urgency without using words. The signal was so unusual that even the most experienced officers paused, leaning closer to their screens, adjusting sensors, and rechecking the data. The humans debated its meaning. Some argued it was a normal distress signal, sent by a research team stranded on an unstable world. Others suspected a trap, a trick from pirates or hostile aliens meant to lure them into a deadly ambush. The signal's intensity was unlike anything the human analysts had ever observed. It seemed to grow stronger the longer they observed it, almost as if it could sense attention being paid. Sensors began to pick up anomalies in space around the signal's origin, magnetic distortions, faint energy pulses, and irregular gravitational shifts. The scientists warned caution, but the fleet commanders were under pressure. Humanity had always prided itself on reaching out, helping those in need, and asserting presence across the galaxy. Hesitation seemed impossible. The decision was made to respond. A small fleet was mobilized, equipped with advanced scanners, defensive systems, and ships designed for rapid intervention. The crew members, from pilots to communication officers, felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. This was their chance to make contact with an entirely new species and show humanity's commitment to aid in the galaxy. Orders were clear: approach carefully, maintain constant communication, and be ready for anything. Despite the caution, there was an unspoken thrill. No one had ever seen an alien distress signal with such complexity, nor one that emitted so many unknown energy signatures at once. While the human fleet prepared, deep in the void of space, far beyond normal travel routes, the Deathworlder fleet stirred. Centuries of inactivity had made these ships almost like sleeping giants. Their war engines were powered down, their weapons silent, and their navigation systems dormant. But the alien SOS had passed through a specific sector, unknowingly activating the Deathworlder's ancient alert system. Like a predator sensing prey, the fleet's warships began to awaken. Slowly at first, massive ships powered up, their dark hulls shimmering with alien technology, veins of energy pulsating through their structures like the heartbeat of a living creature. Smaller fighter craft swarmed around the motherships, readying weapons that could tear apart planets. Every command system recognized the SOS as a warning, but also as a threat. Interference from foreign civilizations was unacceptable. Back in the human fleet, the team continued to study the signal, unaware of the looming danger. They were obsessed with decoding its strange energy patterns, trying to determine the nature of the crisis on the alien planet. Some analysts hypothesized that the anomalies were environmental, caused by planetary instability. Others suggested biological threats, perhaps even a virus or chemical disaster affecting the local ecosystem. Officers held meetings, debated strategies, and considered all possible outcomes. The tension was high because the longer they waited, the further the SOS would drift into dangerous sectors, possibly attracting unknown attention. Finally, the fleet entered the alien sector. The first glimpses of the planet sent chills through the crews. From a distance, it appeared both beautiful and unstable. Rivers of iridescent liquid twisted across the surface. Glowing crystal forests shimmered, and electrical storms danced across the horizon in chaotic, unpredictable bursts. The planet seemed alive and angry at the same time. The human ships scanned the surface, trying to detect life, yet the signals were faint, scattered, and inconsistent. This was not a planet in normal distress. It was a world on the verge of collapse, Every new reading confirmed that the situation was far worse than anticipated. As the human fleet approached, sensors began to pick up additional disturbances. Energy spikes that had seemed minor from afar were now enormous. Some ships' instruments began malfunctioning, lights flickering and systems recalibrating constantly. Pilots reported strange interference in communication signals, strange echoes that sounded almost like whispers across space. The SOS had drawn attention, but not just from the human fleet. The Deathworlders were moving closer. They were faster than any human vessel, advanced beyond comprehension, and their presence was hidden until the final moments before engagement. Their ships appeared as massive silhouettes against the stars, vast enough to block the light of distant suns, engines glowing faintly like embers in a dark fire. Despite these warnings, the humans pressed on. They believed they could reach the planet, assess the situation, and provide assistance. The fleet divided into groups, some to enter orbit and scan for survivors, others to remain at a distance, ready to defend against unknown threats. The atmosphere on the ships was tense. Officers briefed their crews repeatedly, remained calm, report anomalies immediately, and prioritized the safety of all personnel. Yet, fear was inevitable. No one had prepared for an unknown alien SOS that could also awaken a deadly, hidden fleet in the process. The realization that they might be entering a trap slowly began to settle in, but it was too late to turn back. The human fleet's advanced sensors finally detected faint signs of life on the planet, scattered readings indicating small structures, perhaps remnants of the alien outpost, but no active signals responded to their communications. It was almost as if the planet's inhabitants had vanished into thin air. The crew exchanged worried glances. Some suspected evacuation attempts by the aliens had failed. Others feared something more sinister. As the fleet prepared for orbit, the first shadow appeared in distant space, a massive object moving faster than expected, dark and angular, with energy patterns that made the human officers' systems flag it immediately. It was the first sign of the Deathworlder fleet approaching, yet the humans could not recognize what it truly was. They saw the mass and felt the danger, but its full scale and intent remained unknown. Every decision became critical. The fleet had to balance approaching the planet safely with the risk of triggering unknown defenses. They attempted to send warning signals to clarify that they were there to help, but interference from the Deathworlder energy patterns made communication spotty. Systems that were reliable moments before began to fail. Navigation controls fluctuated as energy fields warped the space around them. The human officers realized that this mission was no longer a simple rescue operation. It was a high-stakes navigation through a dangerous and unknown region of space, with life-and-death consequences for everyone involved. At the same time, the Deathworlders moved with terrifying precision. Their awakening was methodical, as if the entire fleet were a single organism responding to a distant heartbeat. Massive engines powered up one by one, weapons charged, and fighter crafts dispersed strategically across the approach vector. Any civilization in their path would be destroyed, not because of malice, but because that was the protocol embedded in their systems. Any interference with their territory, even unintentional, was a threat to be eliminated. The humans, unaware of the approaching fleet's intelligence and scale, were unknowingly walking into the jaws of a predator far older and more dangerous than any species they had encountered. Back on the human ships, discussions continued. Analysts tried to decode the unusual energy signatures, attempting to determine if the anomalies were natural or artificial. The urgency of the SOS weighed heavily on them. Each minute brought them closer to a planet in crisis, closer to the unknown, and closer to a fleet of unimaginable power. Crew members spoke in hushed tones, sharing theories, fears, and prayers. Realizing that their mission had grown far beyond anything they had trained for, the unknown had suddenly become terrifyingly real, and the fate of the alien civilization and their own lives hung by the thinnest of threads. The fleet pressed forward. Despite the danger, the human desire to help, combined with curiosity and pride, pushed them into a situation where every second counted. Systems alarms continued to flare, energy readings spiked unpredictably, and strange shadows flickered across sensor displays. The realization slowly sank in. The SOS signal, meant as a call for help, had not only reached them, it had also activated forces far beyond their understanding. The calm, organized mission had transformed into a precarious gamble, where a single misstep could provoke the wrath of a fleet capable of annihilating worlds. And in the distance, beyond the limits of human perception, the Deathworlders accelerated their approach. Ancient war machines, long dormant, moved with terrifying purpose, ready to respond to the smallest interference. The alien SOS, designed as a lifeline, had become a beacon that would forever change the course of everyone involved. The human fleet moved cautiously toward the alien planet, every ship alert, every crew member tense. From orbit, the world below looked beautiful yet menacing, a kaleidoscope of glowing rivers and crystalline forests, with storms of strange electric light leaping across the skies. But beauty, as the humans quickly realized, did not mean safety. Sensors showed scattered structures, evidence of life, yet there was no movement, no signs of activity. It was as though the planet itself had gone silent. Communication attempts to the alien inhabitants produced nothing. The silence was eerie, unsettling, and the kind that gnawed at the edges of the human crew's nerves. As the fleet orbited cautiously, trying to gather information, the first anomaly appeared. A flicker in the darkness of space's shadow moving faster than expected was detected on long-range scanners. At first, some analysts dismissed it as a glitch, an optical error in the sensors caused by energy fluctuations from the planet's surface. But the shadow grew, moving toward the fleet with impossible speed and precision. Lights on the bridge blinked erratically. Alarms sounded faint at first, then louder as the object grew closer. The crew finally realized it was no natural phenomenon. Something enormous was approaching, massive enough to block stars, yet moving with unnatural grace through the void. And then the Deathworlders revealed themselves. The first ships appeared like jagged silhouettes against the blackness of space. They were enormous, far beyond the scale of any human vessel, their shapes unlike anything humans had ever imagined. Hulls black as void, streaked with veins of glowing red and violet energy, pulsating rhythmically, almost as if the ships themselves were alive. Their engines emitted no sound, yet the sheer force of their presence made human senses tremble. Hundreds of smaller ships swarmed around the massive warships, forming patterns so precise that they seemed choreographed by a single mind. The human fleet immediately realized that they were no longer merely observers, they were intruders in the territory of an ancient, terrifying force. Panic rippled through the human crews. The first instinct was to retreat, but the Deathworlders' positioning made escape nearly impossible. Their ships had already formed a blockade, cutting off any direct path out of orbit. Human commanders attempted to maintain calm, issuing orders to hold formation and prepare defensive measures. Pilots scrambled to adjust shields, weapon systems charged at maximum capacity, and communication channels buzzed with anxious voices. Every sensor picked up unfamiliar energy readings, waves of heat, and distortion fields that seemed to twist space itself around the massive alien warships. It was clear that conventional weapons might be useless against such an advanced foe. Meanwhile, closer to the planet, the abandoned alien outpost told a story of sudden chaos. The structures were still intact, but there were signs of rapid evacuation, scattered equipment, broken tools, and signs of struggle. Whatever had happened, it had happened quickly. The humans realized that the alien inhabitants might have fled or been captured, leaving the planet seemingly empty. The SOS that had called them here, intended as a plea for help, had already triggered a chain reaction. What they had thought was a simple rescue mission had become a confrontation with forces far beyond anything they had anticipated. The Deathworlders did not communicate in a way humans could understand. No voice, no signal, only movement and presence. Yet, every gesture of their fleet radiated threat. Their smaller ships patrolled aggressively, weaving between human vessels, probing for weaknesses. Energy pulses flared along their hulls, powerful enough to fry sensors from a distance. For the human crew, watching the fleet approach was like watching predators circle a trapped herd. There was no mercy in the Deathworlders' movement, only precision and deadly intent. As the first contact intensified, human commanders struggled to understand the enemy. Every attempt to send messages, warnings, or peace signals was met with interference. The Deathworlders' technology scrambled frequencies, distorted transmissions, and emitted energy patterns that made human sensors unreliable. Pilots found it difficult to navigate through the warship's presence, while engineers worked feverishly to maintain power to shields and weapons. The reality of their situation sank in. They were facing a fleet centuries ahead of human technology, ships that could obliterate planets, with no negotiation, no warning, and no mercy. Amid the chaos, some human officers tried to maintain order, issuing calm instructions. Attempting to devise strategies to protect the fleet, they recognized that any aggressive action might provoke immediate retaliation. Every movement had to be deliberate, careful, and precise. Yet the Deathworlders seemed to anticipate almost every action, adjusting their positions, tightening the blockade, and pressing the humans into tighter formations. It became clear that this was not just a defensive strategy. The Deathworlders were testing the humans, evaluating them, and preparing to eliminate any perceived threat. The first exchange of force was almost accidental. A human ship, trying to maneuver into a better scanning position, triggered a warning field near a Deathworlder vessel. Energy pulses flared, defensive shields activated, and a wave of destructive energy swept across the area. No ship was destroyed, but the humans realized that even minor mistakes could lead to instant annihilation. The panic among pilots grew. Some froze, some overreacted, and others made bold but reckless maneuvers. Every second brought danger. Every decision had consequences that could be catastrophic, despite the overwhelming threat. Human crews fought to maintain focus. Their mission, initially to rescue and aid, now shifted to survival and observation. The sensors continued scanning for life signs on the planet below, while other ships tried to gather data on the Deathworlders' formation. energy output, and possible weaknesses. Crews recorded every detail, knowing that even small insights could mean the difference between survival and destruction. Each officer understood that the SOS had unintentionally drawn them into this confrontation, and that their intervention could have consequences far beyond what anyone could predict. The atmosphere aboard human ships became tense, a mixture of fear and determination. Pilots whispered prayers or muttered technical jargon. Engineers tightened circuits and rerouted power, and commanders moved from station to station, issuing calm instructions while keeping an eye on every display. Even as panic threatened to spread, they knew that staying organized was their only chance. Their survival depended not just on firepower, but on intelligence, coordination, and the ability to adapt faster than their enemy expected. Meanwhile, the Deathworlders continued their slow, deliberate advance. Their massive vessels moved almost imperceptibly, yet their influence was felt across the orbital field. Gravitational distortions made navigation difficult. Energy spikes threatened system overloads, and subtle magnetic fluctuations interfered with sensors. Every human officer understood that this fleet was not just a collection of ships, but a coordinated, intelligent organism with capabilities far beyond their understanding. The closer the humans moved to the planet, the more difficult every action became, and the more dangerous their situation grew. The humans realized that direct confrontation with the Deathworlders was almost impossible. Their weapons were inadequate, their numbers too small, and the enemy's strategy flawless. Survival depended on careful maneuvering, observation, and improvisation. The fleet prepared for retreat while trying to continue scanning for life on the planet, balancing the need to save alien inhabitants with the need to avoid provoking the deadly fleet. Every ship, every crew member, faced the reality that one wrong move could result in total annihilation. And the stakes had never been higher. The humans had arrived in response to a desperate hoping to aid and rescue, only to find themselves facing an ancient and merciless force. The Deathworlders, drawn by the very signal meant to save lives, had emerged from the shadows, testing, observing, and preparing to strike. The human fleet, caught between a dying planet and a powerful unknown enemy, now faced the ultimate test of courage, intelligence, and survival instinct. Their mission had changed forever, and as the first shadows of the Deathworlder ships loomed closer, it became clear this was only the beginning. That humans had made contact, but they had also entered a battle far larger and more dangerous than they had ever imagined. Their hope was to save lives, but now survival itself had become uncertain. The galaxy, silent and vast, held its breath as the forces met for the first time. One desperate and vulnerable, the other ancient, intelligent, and deadly beyond imagination. The human fleet faced a terrifying reality. They were trapped in the presence of an enemy unlike any they had encountered before. The Deathworlder ships, massive, dark, and pulsating with energy, had fully revealed themselves. Their smaller crafts moved with deadly coordination, weaving between human vessels, probing for weaknesses, and emitting energy pulses that disrupted shields and sensors alike. Every crew member on the human fleet knew that even one mistake could result in annihilation. Panic mixed with determination as humans scrambled to respond to an enemy whose technology and tactics were centuries ahead of their own. The first exchange of fire was almost accidental. A human reconnaissance ship, trying to position itself closer to the planet to scan for life signs, accidentally entered a Deathworlder warning zone. Energy beams lashed out like invisible whips, striking the ship's hull. Alarms screamed across the fleet. The ship's shields flared, absorbing some of the force, but systems overloaded, engines faltered, and the crew barely maintained control. The humans realized instantly that conventional tactics were useless. Weapons that could devastate human opponents had no effect on the alien hulls. Every strike was absorbed, deflected, or countered in ways that left humans stunned and fearful. The human commanders quickly understood that they had to adapt or perish. The fleet split into smaller groups. Some ships focused on protecting the weaker, damaged vessels, while others attempted to study the Deathworlder's movement and energy signatures. Searching for any possible weakness, pilots learned to fly in unorthodox patterns, constantly shifting positions to avoid the pulsating energy fields that could disable entire systems. Engineers rerouted power from non-essential functions to shields and weapons, while scientists worked tirelessly to analyze the enemy's energy patterns, looking for points where human attacks might actually penetrate. Every second of observation was critical. One miscalculation could trigger a deadly response. Meanwhile, the planet below continued to deteriorate. The alien structures lay abandoned, scattered across the surface, evidence of a hasty evacuation or sudden disaster. The SOS that had brought the humans here now seemed like a double-edged sword. It had summoned help but had also drawn the Deathworlders, a fleet capable of annihilating an entire planet. The humans realized that their presence, meant to aid and rescue, had now made the situation far more dangerous. They were trapped between a dying world and a fleet of killers that might destroy everything they sought to save. Communication was next to impossible. The Deathworlders' energy emissions scrambled human transmissions, making coordination extremely difficult. Crews shouted instructions, but even the most precise commands sometimes failed to reach intended recipients. Some ships relied on automated systems, trusting artificial intelligence to respond faster than human reflexes could. Pilots maneuvered with incredible skill, dodging energy pulses and weaving between massive enemy warships. But the stress was overwhelming. Fatigue and fear threatened to overtake even the most experienced crew members. In the midst of the chaos, humans discovered something crucial. The SOS itself had acted like a beacon, revealing the location of the alien outpost to the Death. Every ship, every system, every energy pulse from the humans could be tracked and anticipated. The enemy was not just attacking blindly, they were responding intelligently, predicting human movements, cutting off escape routes, and creating zones of extreme danger. It became evident that the Deathworlders were not just a military force. They were a single, unified organism acting with calculated precision. Survival required not brute strength but careful strategy and ingenuity. The fleet quickly adapted. Teams of pilots devised risky maneuvers to divide the enemy's attention. Smaller, more agile ships acted as decoys, drawing Deathworlder fire while larger vessels attempted to protect them. Engineers and scientists collaborated to create temporary energy shields using unconventional methods, sometimes risking short circuits and explosions in the process. Commanders made split-second decisions, balancing the need to protect the fleet with the need to study enemy behavior. Every move was tense, every decision life or death amid the fighting. The human crews also tried to locate survivors on the planet below. Scanners picked up faint life signs, possibly aliens who had escaped the initial disaster. Efforts to beam rescue equipment down were complicated by the interference from the Deathworlder's presence. Energy pulses from the enemy disrupted transmission, causing equipment to malfunction or drift off course. Rescue teams faced nearly impossible odds. Every attempt to aid the aliens risked drawing deadly attention from the fleet above. Yet, despite the danger, humans pushed forward, unwilling to abandon those in need. The courage and determination of the crew shone brightest in these desperate moments. The intensity of the battle increased. Human weapons, previously thought useless, began to reveal subtle effects when coordinated perfectly. Energy pulses fired simultaneously from multiple ships created small openings in the Deathworlder's defenses. Though only momentarily, pilots adapted to new formations, working together to exploit even the tiniest advantage. Engineers continued experimenting with alien technology gathered from the SOS transmission, hoping to create a temporary edge. It was a delicate dance between risk and reward, and each second carried the weight of survival or total destruction. Human casualties began to mount, yet the fleet refused to surrender. Every ship damaged or destroyed reminded them of the stakes. Crews mourned losses even as they continued to fight, understanding that hesitation could mean the end for everyone. The battle was no longer about saving a planet, it was about survival, endurance, and finding a way to escape a predator far older and more advanced than they had imagined. The tension was unbearable, but so was the determination. They could not give up. They could not fail. Amid the chaos, one small human team devised a risky plan. Using the remaining alien technology, they intended to create false energy signatures, mimicking the signals of multiple ships to confuse the Death. The idea was to trick the enemy into focusing on decoys, giving the real fleet a chance to maneuver. It was dangerous and untested, but desperation left no other choice. Engineers and pilots worked together, improvising rerouting power and creating holographic decoys. Every second of effort mattered, and the success of the plan depended on precise timing and coordination under extreme pressure. The plan was executed. Decoy signals flashed across space, drawing some of the Deathworlder's smaller crafts away from the main fleet. Human pilots adjusted their positions, weaving between warships and energy pulses with a mix of skill, fear, and determination. For a few tense moments, it seemed as if the maneuver might succeed. But the Deathworlders, intelligent and relentless, quickly adjusted. They detected the deception and redirected their forces, forcing the humans to improvise once again. The stakes had never been higher, and every move was a gamble with life itself. Despite the overwhelming odds, humans refused to give in. They continued to fight with courage, intelligence, and coordination. Pilots pushed their ships to the limits, engineers found creative solutions to critical failures, and commanders issued calm instructions despite the chaos surrounding them. They were facing a deadly force unlike anything in history, but their determination and ingenuity gave them a fighting chance. It was a battle that tested not only their skill but their spirit, forcing them to adapt in ways they never imagined. The human fleet had survived, but barely. Damage was extensive. Systems were failing, and casualties were high. The Deathworlders had not been defeated, nor had they fully withdrawn. The humans realized that this encounter was only the beginning of a larger struggle. They had learned critical lessons about the enemy, their technology, and their tactics, but the cost had been immense. Survival depended on ingenuity, courage, and the ability to act under pressure. Amid the ruins of space, the surviving human crews regrouped. They tended to the wounded, repaired damaged ships, and analyzed what had happened. Every officer understood that the SOS, meant as a plea for help, had inadvertently triggered one of the most dangerous encounters in galactic history. Their mission had changed. No longer a simple rescue, it was now a desperate fight for survival against a predator capable of unimaginable destruction. Yet, despite fear and exhaustion, hope remained. Humans were resourceful, determined, and resilient. They had faced death and survived. And although the Deathworlder still loomed as a threat, the fleet had learned something crucial. Even in the face of overwhelming power, courage and intelligence could create opportunities to endure and escape. The battle ended, but the war was far from over. The human fleet had survived their first contact with the Deathworlders, but they knew that the next encounter would be even more dangerous. Every ship, every crew member, and every piece of technology was now part of a story of survival against impossible odds. The galaxy, vast and silent, seemed to hold its breath as humans prepared for what would come next. The SOS that had started it all had not only brought aid but had awakened an ancient predator. The consequences of that call for help were only beginning to unfold, and the humans were determined to face whatever came next, no matter the cost. The human fleet had survived its first encounter with the Deathworlders, but the cost had been staggering. Ships were heavily damaged, some were barely functional, and crews were exhausted, both physically and mentally. Alarms still flickered across bridges, and emergency lights cast long, tense shadows over the faces of pilots and officers. Every person aboard knew that they had narrowly escaped total annihilation. But the danger was far from over. The Deathworlders, massive and intelligent, had not withdrawn entirely. Their fleet still lingered in the sector, moving methodically, as if aware that some human ships were damaged and vulnerable. The humans needed a plan to escape, and quickly, or they would find themselves surrounded once again. Amid the chaos, fleet commanders gathered on the largest command ship to discuss options. It was clear that conventional engagement would not work. The Deathworlders' armor, shields, and weaponry were far beyond anything humanity could hope to match. Instead, the plan had to rely on ingenuity, deception, and timing. Engineers and scientists suggested using the alien technology gathered from the SOS transmission to create false energy signatures, a risky but potentially life-saving tactic. These signatures could mimic additional ships, projecting the illusion of a larger fleet or diverting the Deathworlders' attention long enough for the real, human ships to escape. Preparations began immediately. Engineers worked tirelessly, rerouting energy from damaged systems, improvising new circuits, and creating holographic decoys that could move in patterns mimicking real ships. Pilots practiced maneuvers over and over, coordinating with decoy projections to ensure that the Deathworlders would focus on the false targets. Communication channels buzzed with tension, every instruction precise, every order critical. Even minor errors could compromise the entire operation. The human crews, though fatigued and fearful, moved with incredible determination. Their survival depended on perfect execution. As the plan unfolded, the first decoys were activated. False energy signals flashed across the sector, mimicking ships and creating the illusion of a much larger fleet than actually existed. At first, the Deathworlder seemed cautious, analyzing the sudden surge of activity. That humans watched tensely as the enemy's energy patterns shifted, focusing on the decoys. Pilots seized the moment, accelerating their ships, weaving between real and projected vessels, and trying to move out of the Deathworlder's immediate range. Every maneuver was precise, calculated, and terrifyingly close to failure. A single misstep could trigger the enemy's full wrath. Even as the human fleet moved, the planet below continued to deteriorate. The alien outpost, abandoned and scattered, was now at the mercy of natural disasters, possibly triggered by the same environmental collapse that had sent the SOS in the first place. The rivers shifted violently, crystalline forests fractured under unseen pressures, and lightning storms lashed across the surface. Any survivors on the planet were at extreme risk, and human scanners could only detect fragments of movement-teeny signals that might indicate life, but might also be false readings caused by the planet's unstable energy fields. Every effort to provide aid was now complicated by the ongoing threat above. The Deathworlders, however, were not easily fooled. Their fleet adjusted to the decoys, splitting forces to engage multiple threats simultaneously. Energy beams and defensive pulses swept across space, striking decoys and damaging some human ships in the process. Pilots had to react instantly, dodging blasts, recalibrating shields, and improvising routes through a deadly gauntlet. Engineers continued rerouting power, sometimes causing temporary system failures. But the human fleet pressed on, refusing to surrender. Every second was a battle of wits, skill, and courage amid the struggle. Small teams discovered that the Deathworlders' coordination, though terrifying, had subtle patterns. Observing these patterns allowed pilots to anticipate enemy movements and exploit brief windows of opportunity. Using this knowledge, the human fleet began a slow, cautious retreat, always staying one step ahead of the enemy's detection. It was a delicate balance. Move too quickly, and the Deathworlders would notice. Move too slowly, and the fleet would be overtaken. The tension on every bridge was palpable, every officer aware that failure meant certain death. Meanwhile, human crews worked to maximize the effectiveness of their remaining technology. Sensors were calibrated to detect even the faintest weaknesses in enemy formations, and some ships experimented with energy pulses designed to temporarily disrupt the Deathworlder's shields. These improvisations were dangerous. A misfire could destroy a ship from within. Yet, despite the risks, the human fleet pressed on, driven by necessity, skill, and determination. The survival of every crew member, and the chance to continue aiding those below, depended on these daring efforts. As the fleet continued its maneuvering, the first tangible signs of success emerged. Some Deathworlder crafts, drawn to decoy signals, pursued false targets while the main fleet slipped towards safer pilots and engineers coordinated flawlessly, timing maneuvers to minimize exposure to enemy fire. Human ships moved through the void like shadows, weaving through energy pulses and dodging massive warships. It was a dangerous ballet of survival, where courage, strategy, and precision combined to create a slim but real chance of escape. Despite progress, casualties mounted. Some ships were too damaged to continue and had to be abandoned. Crews were injured, exhausted, and fearful, yet they persevered. The human spirit, resilient and unyielding, shone brightest in these moments of extreme danger. Officers issued calm instructions, medics worked tirelessly to save the wounded, and pilots continued to execute their dangerous maneuvers with unwavering focus. Every small success felt monumental, every avoided attack a triumph of skill and courage. Finally, after hours of tense maneuvering and desperate improvisation, the fleet reached a point where the Deathworlder's pursuit began to falter. The decoys had worked, and human ships had exploited small weaknesses in enemy formation. Retreat was still dangerous, but escape was now possible. The fleet accelerated toward open space, leaving the immediate orbit of the planet and the Deathworlder's primary force. Every crew member felt the tension slowly release, though exhaustion remained, and the knowledge that the enemy could return at any moment lingered in their minds. That as the fleet moved farther from the planet, the remaining alien structures and the chaotic surface below came into view one last time. The humans realized that, despite their efforts, they had been unable to save the planet itself. The SOS intended to summon aid had awakened a predator capable of planetary destruction. Yet, they had survived, and some of the alien inhabitants might still live, hidden or evacuated. The lesson was clear. Even the best intentions in a dangerous universe could have unforeseen and catastrophic consequences during the quiet moments following the retreat. Human crews took stock of what had happened. Ships were damaged, systems were strained, and the psychological toll was immense. Yet, the experience had revealed their resilience, ingenuity, and courage in the face of overwhelming odds. Fleet commanders began analyzing the encounter, documenting every detail, and preparing for the possibility of future engagement. Every lesson learned could be critical in surviving another confrontation with the Deathworlders. Amid the relief of survival, a sobering reality settled in. The SOS had triggered events that no one could have predicted. A desperate plea for help had drawn the attention of an ancient deadly force and almost led to total destruction. Yet the humans had adapted, survived, and even turned the situation to their advantage through clever tactics, bravery, and teamwork. It was a harsh lesson in the unpredictability of the galaxy and the dangers hidden in every call for help. The story ended with the fleet moving into deeper space, carrying survivors, data, and the heavy burden of what they had witnessed. The humans had endured, but they knew that survival came at a cost. The Deathworlders still existed, powerful and intelligent, waiting in the shadows of the galaxy. The lesson was clear. The universe was vast, mysterious, and dangerous, and even acts of kindness could have consequences far beyond imagination. Humanity had survived, but they had also learned that vigilance, courage, and ingenuity were essential for anyone daring to venture into the unknown. The SOS that had started it all remained in the void, a silent signal echoing across the galaxy. It had called for help, awakened a creditor, and tested the limits of human courage. The fleet moved forward, scarred but wiser, understanding that in the vast expanse of space, survival was not guaranteed, and every action carried consequences beyond comprehension. The galaxy was dangerous, but humans had proven they could endure even in the face of unimaginable threats. Their story, born from a desperate call for help, had become a testament to ingenuity, bravery, and the indomitable spirit of life in the universe.